Hello and welcome to Perspectives, where we take a deep dive into the issues of the day and where we take a look at people's opinion on such issues. I am Ruth Osime. Today we begin with a name you all know, Melania Trump. Before she was First Lady, Melania entered the United States on a tourist visa. She later got the Einstein visa, meant for exceptionally brilliant people like Nobel laureates and Pulitzer Prize winners in various fields. If U.S. immigration laws were applied strictly and without bias, as they often are for less privileged migrants, Melania Trump's early visa violations, particularly working while on a tourist visa, would likely have disqualified her from obtaining permanent residency. And yet, her status has never been publicly challenged. She remains untouched, unquestioned, and quietly protected by privilege. Her case raises a troubling question. Is the law truly equal for all, or does power shield some while others are punished? Meanwhile, ordinary people with valid papers, green cards, student visas, and job offers are sometimes being detained, deported, and denied entry. Their documents are scrutinized, their lives are disrupted, their rights erased. And the unspoken message is, where you're from and how much power you hold often determines whether you're welcomed or expelled. Tonight, we ask the hard questions about double standards, diplomatic silence, and the emotional costs of being in Nigeria in today's immigration world. This isn't just a policy debate, it's a human story. We're heading for a short break, but stay with us because we'll be right back to introduce our distinguished guests. Opara, Professor Efem Ubi, and Acike Chude. Perspectives return in just a moment. I'm now being joined here on Perspectives by Dr. Maxwell Opara, a constitutional lawyer, human rights advocate, and public affairs analyst with a PhD in international medical law, a notary public and UK-trained chartered arbitrator. Dr. Opara is also a certified in mediation, conciliation, and forensic auditing. Next up is Professor Efem Ubi, the Director of Studies at the Institute of International Affairs, Lagos. And last, but certainly not the least, is Acike Chude, National Secretary of Nigerian Union of Journalists, a human rights and civil society activist and change agent. He is also an associate member of the International Professional Managers Association and the National Nigerian Institute of Public Relations. He's also a social and public affairs commentator on both national and international platforms. Many thanks to everyone for joining me here on Perspectives. So let me start with you, Idem. With Trump's return, are we about to see immigration laws sharpened once again? This time, even the blunter edge for Africans.
Thank you, Ruth, for having me on your program today. Yes, one of the areas that has been there has been a hot spot in the United States has been the immigration policies, of the present administration. However, one thing we should have to take into consideration is the fact that these reforms in immigration policies have been part of what the U.S. Capitol Hill and as well as the state houses within the U.S. have been looking for, but there has been some form of disagreement over the years. But with Trump, I feel Trump is one president who takes the bull by the horn, and so a lot of these migration policies, as well as immigration governance, are beginning to come to terms, with his own policies in terms of relations with other states and countries within the international system. And so what is going on now in the United States is immigration reforms, which refers to changes or attempts to change laws related to immigrants as well as immigration. And so I think, with Trump coming in, he has to overturn what Biden has put in place.
Okay.
You know, when Biden came, a lot of immigration and migration laws were actually, the ones that were enacted by Trump 1.0 during his first term were actually taken off, you know, which allow a lot of immigration surge in the United States, you know, the last 4 years. And so I think Trump has come back again to now upturn those migration laws which Biden put in place.
Okay. Well, before we get to the guests I get to the guests in Abuja for this topic, let's pause and listen to U.S. President Donald Trump's.
Quiet.
The U.S. Supreme Court has just ordered President Donald Trump to deport his wife and children. Yes, for the first time in U.S. history, the law is being turned back on the man who created it. According to official documents, the ruling came after an internal investigation revealed irregularities in the immigration files of Melania Trump and her parents, including unauthorized entry missing visa records and questions about chain migration abuse. But here's what changed everything. The court ruled that if Trump's policies apply to millions, they must apply to his own household too, and the deport Melania and her children or step down from office. The decision sends shockwaves through the country. Latino families torn apart by deportations are now watching as the architect of that system is forced to face his own rules. No one is above the law, the judges wrote, not even the one who signed it. This isn't about politics anymore. It's about principle, about fairness, and about how powers should never protect hypocrisy. Comment, if you believe justice must begin at home.
Welcome back. That was a short video on the President Donald Trump's wife, Melania Trump's controversial visa. Now, let me start with Chude. Chude, can we have you in the house, please? Good to see you today, and also good to see you, Maxwell.
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Now, Chude, what does Melania...
It's a pleasure.
Good to see you. This is a question directed to Chude. What does Melania Trump's alleged history of working on a visitor visa reveal about Donald Trump's own credibility and integrity, especially given his hardline stance on immigration? And how does this reflect the global double standard where the powerful bend the rules while the less privileged are punished?
Well, I think the verdict is still out there. Investigations obviously are still going on. We also just want to see exactly what the Trump administration is going to do. You know, it is said that if you live in a glass house, you do not throw stones. These things have a way of, you know, getting back to bite you. And so, of course, it's a dilemma. You know, and of course, you can be sure that with the opposition, the spate of oppositions in the country, you know, to how these immigration policies are being carried out, the opposition, essentially the Democratic Party, and then those who are not very fond of Donald Trump, will push it to the limit to see that justice, is done. It's as simple as that. Of course, there could be other ways. Of course, he finds himself in a dilemma, very serious dilemma. People are watching him closely. What is he going to do? If he relaxes you know, with regards to the wife, and he said he relaxes the screw with regards to the wife and then the wife's family, then he must do likewise for the people, because everybody is watching closely. And then if he does that, a lot of people are going to be involved. He's not going to be able to fulfill the promise he made during the election about deporting about, you know, a million people a year. Already that particular promise is proving difficult. At the end of the year, it is anticipated that they would have, maybe if they are lucky, they will remove about 500,000 you know, illegals instead of a million. And so it's going to put paid to the promises that he made to members of his party and then to the movement behind it, the MAGA movement, which he founded. And so it's a very precarious and, you know, and deleterious situation for him. Obviously, perhaps there could be a way they could, you know, get the wife. That's the only way. It's either he relaxes this policy, which will be very politically suicidal for him, or he gets the wife and the family deported. But of course, you know that investigations are still on. So he gets the wife and her family deported, and then now allows them to go through the process of coming back. So ultimately, at the end of the day, even if that process is allowed to happen, he is the president of the United States. If he bows to public pressure and sends the wife away and the family and they stay there for some time, they can always use the instrumentality of government to bring them back. If, for instance, you look at those people who self-deported, and it's not just going to be her alone. There were some people that had also transgressed the immigration law in the United States. They gave them an option to self-deport. That if they self-deport, that is, to willingly on their own, they gave them a bit of money for them to be able to do that. So if they willingly on their own deport themselves, then the administration will look more favorably at them when they now apply anew to want to come back to the United States. So perhaps, the wife can live under such circumstances. And if that happens and the wife comes back maybe in about 6 and the family 6 or 6 months or a year, depending on the time period, and you cannot just say that is isolationist. That move is isolationist because other people who self-deported would also be allowed to come back. Perhaps that might be a narrow window, a small window for him to be able to resolve that issue.
Now, Maxwell, why do many Africans, especially Nigerians, receive short-term 3-month single-entry visas when citizens of other countries get multiple-year access? Is this more about risk perception or diplomatic leverage?
First of all, you ask yourself whether there is a bilateral agreement between America and Nigeria, and also whether there is a bilateral agreement with America and some other countries. What does it say? These are the issues we need to look at. Now, if there is a bilateral agreement and the agreement said, look at what you are entitled to, look at what you are qualified for. So that sounds it, because a bilateral agreement on a visa is a law, which both countries agreed. And then once they agreed and they consented to it, it stands, it's binding on the law. You cannot say, probably, let me just say, you are, America granted somebody from UK, a British citizen, let's say 7 years visa on whatever, for whatever reason or for whatever purpose. And that of Nigeria, you are granted 3 months or 6 months. You said, after all, this person's own. No, it's bilateral agreement. And it's all about also the interest. That one is on that. Then 2, once you are talking about deportation, Nigeria will deport people. It is the fact that we have incompetent leaders who doesn't even know their left and right. Otherwise, our borders supposed to be fortified. And if you discover that you are an illegal immigrant here, we follow the due process and deport you back to your country. So, but for the fact that probably we allow our country to be destroyed and we are going to another person's country, and if they feel that you are not qualified to be here, they can deport you. Now, the only concern personally I am is the way Trump is going about it. Remember that once you arrested somebody for whatever reason, you say that is an illegal immigrant, you follow the due process to deport the person back. You don't violate the person's right, because there are some other laws, not only your own laws, there are some other laws. We have a Universal Declaration of Human Rights. You see what Article 14 sub 1 said. We also have an International Convention on Civil and Political Rights. We also have a Convention Against Torture and other cruel, inhuman, degrading treatment, punishment, CAT. We also have a Refugee Convention of 1951 and Protocol of 1967. These are the laws which America has signatory to. So if you are, whatever immigration policy you are carrying out, whatever immigration enforcement you are carrying out, you should also look at all these particular laws. Otherwise, people can pull out an action against you. And I also want to use this medium to advise, if you feel, whoever that feel that Trump has trampled upon your rights and you are deported back here, you can file action. We did it in Nnamdi Kalu's matter when Kenya misbehaved and Nigeria misbehaved by abducting Nnamdi Kalu and kidnapping Nnamdi Kalu and brought him to this country. We filed action against Kenya in court there. We got judgment. The one who filed against Nigeria here, we got judgment. So if somebody, there are plethora of cases, you can see USA and Toscano. The judgment was given in 1974. where somebody's right was violated in the process of trying to deport him. The person filed action there. And the New York court said, yes, his right has been violated, and made a very heavy declaration against American government. So Trump is a president does not mean that he's the owner of America. So if probably, and reconciling it with what is also happening there, if some other persons from other countries are being put on chain, subjected in a degrading treatment, inhuman treatment, as against what the law provides, it's a call for action. Somebody can file action. You don't even need to be in America for you to pull out an action there. You can be in Nigeria and engage somebody, a lawyer, an attorney in America there. They will file action against American government on that particular ground.
Thank you very much for that. Now let me ask Efem in the House. How can Nigeria proactively reshape global narratives that negatively affects its citizens' chances abroad?
Well, thank you very much for your question. And I think I'll just say that, first of all, we have to keep the domestic politics right, in terms of putting in place the right reforms, policies that could build the nation, in terms of, for instance, we should be talking about productive infrastructure. We are also able to put in place, the problem. Remedy the problem of electricity. Also create conducive environment for investment, for the attraction of foreign investments, and a host of other economic policies that could actually give life to the nation. I also like to say that over the years, since the turn of the Fourth Republic, government has been doing enough in terms of protecting its citizens abroad. So if you look at the early hours of or the era of the Fourth Republic in 1999, during the advent of democracy in Nigeria, you found out that, first of all, what the government did, under President Obasanjo was the foreign policy of reconstruction, image building, and which yielded a lot of fruit, followed by President Musa Yar'Adua's administration, where he talked about diplomacy of consequences, or citizens diplomacy. We know where Nigerian citizen became the ultimate in terms of our foreign policy engagement. So invariably what that means is whatever happened to Nigerian citizens anywhere, the government would take a proactive measure, to be able to mitigate such a negative action, followed by the Jonathan's administration, which foreign policy was that of attraction of investment also into the country. Now we also talk about the last administration of late President Muhammadu Buhari, where it was the tripartite foreign policy based on insecurity. The government was trying to make sure there's insecurity at home, job creation, which is also part of development, as well as fight against corruption. But much more importantly, this administration has come up with the 4 Ds, which has to do with demography, democracy, as well as development and diaspora. And so you see those key factors which has been listed as the foreign policy thrust of this administration is generally focused on the citizen. When you talk about the diaspora, we're talking about Nigerian citizens who are abroad. And so the government is also key, making sure that it will protect Nigerian citizens in whatever ways. The issue of development, which is key across Africa, that's a big problem for Africa. But I think we have to do the right thing, put in place, like I said initially, put in place the right economic framework and right economic policies and reforms, to build the domestic economy. That will also, while it will inhibit Nigerian citizens traveling abroad for greener pasture, it will also create a conducive environment for Nigerian citizens to be around. And so I think one of the key area that the government has to focus on is just build the domestic economy, build the domestic policies in such a way that citizens will not want to leave anymore, and they want to stay within Nigeria.
Thank you very much. So can we go back to Chude? Now, we've heard of instances where So this question is for you. We've heard of instances where some people were sent back because their phones were they got into their phones, looked at their Instagram pages, and made a decision to return the people based on what they saw on the Instagram page. So if visa is revoked due to social media, can these same platforms also be used by the affected individuals or civil society to create global pressure? Or is the US just too powerful to care?
Well, let me just say this. Trump is doing what he promised to the American people. Trump was very open about the plans to deport illegal aliens. Let's be clear about that. He received wide approval by the American people. So he's not doing anything that is against the will of the American people. I think essentially what is happening is that, just like my colleague here in the studio said, he's not following the rules. People have accused his administration of lack of transparency in that. For instance, if we remember the case of Abrego Garcia, that the Democrats described as the California father. He was just adopted without following the process, and then they went to court and got a judgment in favor of the man, and then they wanted him brought back. By then they had taken him to Guatemala, and the Trump administration was relying on the fact, according to them, that the Guatemalan, that the man has left American territory, and they are no longer subject, to Guatemala is no longer subject to American law and the rest. Of course, that was the politics of it. Eventually, a lot of pressure was brought to bear on the Trump administration. The man was brought back to the United States. And of course, because he himself was not clean, he was now charged for domestic battery against the wife and all other crimes belonging to Tren de Aragua, that notorious gang in the United States from Venezuela. But I would just before I get to the issue of the social media, let me just reflect a bit on the last question you asked my honorable guest in the studio with you there in Lagos, and just add a bit. I agree with a lot of the things he said. But the reality is that if you have a man, in a family, in a typical village, clan, or community, and he's able to take care of his children, he pays their school fees, His children have been well brought up. They have been relatively responsible. Whenever that community is going to do anything, going to have a meeting, there's a tendency that man will be among the first to be invited for that community or village meeting because he has earned respect. You cannot get respect if you have not earned respect. Many years ago, Nigeria got respect from almost every part of the world, especially in Africa. After what we did in the liberation struggles in Southern Africa, and the kind of sacrifices we made, Liberia, Sierra Leone, all of those things, this is a completely different era. So if you want to change the narrative, you have to start from home because you cannot give what you do not have. And you cannot project strength abroad if you do not have strength at home. You cannot have a country that is riddled with all kinds of social, political, economic contradictions. A country where insecurity has become the order of the day. A country where the only thing the citizens and the international community, hears about, where the only thing they hear about on a regular basis are about killings in Zamfara, Plateau State, Benue State, on a continuous basis, and other parts of the country, unknown government in the southeast, some forms of cultic activities in the southwest, and so on, all over the country. And then you have, with that again, you have myriads of economic issues, poverty, and all of that. So when you have all of this, you cannot elicit respect from the international community. So I agree with your guest in the studio that we have to look inwards and get it right first, because you cannot write a narrative, you cannot force a narrative on the international community. They see what is going on a daily basis in Nigeria, the weakness of the state, to protect its territorial integrity and keep its citizens safe, and then all the economic inequalities and all of these things are critical for earning respect internationally. And I think that is where the country should go. With regards to social media, of course, when you talked about the Instagram issue and how they were able to deport people on the basis of Instagram, I'm not sure that Trump is a very stubborn person. There is no doubt about that. He has, made this deportation one of the major, issues of his administration, apart from the cultural issues in the build-up to that election. This is, if he's not able to carry this thing through, he will be seen as a failure. But I think the problem, for instance, the problem I have with him is the disregard for the rule of law, the lack of transparency in the way these things, have gone. For instance, there are some legal, ways that people use in getting into the United States. Trump is trying to abrogate some of those things. There was this issue of the app, where people were required to go through an app set up under the Biden, administration. It's called the CBP app. Now, more than 900,000 people who came under that app, are now under pressure to leave the country. And then Trump has also targeted about 300,000 people from Afghanistan, Cameroon, and Haiti, apart from other people too. These are people that are under the temporary protected status, TPS, And then again, lastly, those whose presence in the United States, according to the Trump administration, is contentious. That is, people who do not have at least one parent that is born in the United States, are also under threat of being removed. Fortunately for him, and unfortunately for others, for those other people, the Supreme Court endorsed this decision to strip 500,000 people from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela under the CHNV program. That was also under Biden. So you can see that when he started this, all of these moves, there were a plethora of law cases, especially in the lower courts, in the circuits, in the circuit courts, the high courts, all over, federal high courts, all over the United States. And virtually every single one of them, of course, people will say it's ideological, that they were appointed that, under the Democratic government, and therefore they are liberal. Virtually all of them stood against the Trump order. But the matter now got to the Supreme Court, and one by one, the Supreme Court has given victory to the Trump administration on virtually all of these things, except for the birthright citizenship. So it will build that global momentum against Trump over this deportation issue. That is not going to work. I think what the issue should be, people that are legitimately, that have the legitimate right to be in the United States. That is what should, work, because Trump is fulfilling an electoral mandate. So the focus should be on the lack of transparency in this process to ensure that this process has the kind of transparency, that is needed. I think that is the way to go. But beyond that, Ruth, let me just say this. And I think my colleague here in the studio also talked about it. Countries deport. These things that are going on in the United States, and the root is not just the United States. Don't forget that Europe is under pressure. Most of the governments in Europe are liberal governments, far left governments, and they are being challenged seriously, for votes, in the political process by far right governments of far-right political parties that have sold this issue of, some limited extent, level of nationalism to their people, and the fact that Europe belongs to Europeans and the rest. And it is being bought by the European people. With the myriads of socioeconomic problems you have, people are also beginning to say, yeah, maybe we agree with these people. And so the liberal governments across the whole of Europe is losing grip on the people. And that's why they are now responding also to the issues of illegal immigrants. And they are taking actions also, just like America is taking action. So it should be a warning bell to many countries, especially African countries and the Nigerian government, that we need to do much more to get it right domestically in our country, so that we can save our people the harrows, the harrowing experiences that they are going through abroad. After all, we were told many years ago, about 25, 30 years ago, that the royal family from Saudi Arabia was coming to the University College Hospital in Ibadan for treatment. Mm-hmm. What has happened? The erosion of credible political leadership in this country has led us to where we are today.
So much, Chude. But we're going on a break right now, and we'll be right back on Perspectives. Grab your cup of tea, as I always say, and see you right back. Let's get straight back to the discussion. Now, Maxwell, I have this question for you. Should international human rights bodies be more involved in monitoring how immigrants are treated at global borders?
Yes. Last year, in November last year, when we went for International Bar Conference in Mexico, I raised this issue. And the issue of this deportation of immigrants and what have you in America, Canada, and what have you in UK, a way to resolve it. And I made a memo. I gave them a memo. I presented it. Fortunately, some leaders, including, Latif Fagbemi, Attorney General of the Federation, was there in the conference. The long and short story, long and short solution to this is to stop African leaders, in quote, and some other leaders from all these poor countries from going to Europe for medical and educational tourism. Their children should be in their country. Now, if our president now, President Ahmed Bola Tinubu, is having an ordinary headache, the next thing we'll hear is that Bola Onanuga will just tell us our president is off to France to go and treat himself. And you budgeted over 10 billion naira in Acike Clinic. You budgeted, you used 39 billion naira to renovate the International Conference Center. And our president, a few weeks ago, died in London Hospital. And we sent our presidential flight and some presidential dignitaries to go and welcome the corpse back to Nigeria. So these are the issues, because they destroy all this country and giving them pressure there. Whatever Trump is doing is on his own. Take it or you leave it. There are some people, instead of you to deport them from America to Nigeria here, to Bonu, you want to deport them from America to Zamfara. They will prefer to die in America there. And you will not get this thing resolved if all these countries are not balanced. Madam Ruth, I'm telling you, I'm supposed to be in Europe for the past 2 weeks now. But because of work I'm doing here, I can't travel because I have something doing. Even if I travel, I can't stay there up to 2 weeks because I have something doing. If somebody has something doing, you don't need to travel. So these world leaders, Trump and co, should try as much as possible to know why people are trooping into their country. Go to American embassy, go to European embassies and British. You see what I'm telling you. Every day people want to leave. One coming from my village, please, I want to leave this country. I have 1 million naira. I said, where do you want to go? He said, any country at all. I said, what are you going to do there? He said, I just want to leave this country. It's as bad as that. So the issue I'm talking about is that when you're talking about human rights has to do with the good leadership. You can see how these people are looting our money like tomorrow no day. You can see how they are budgeting for themselves, using 150 million naira to buy car for themselves. Nobody's thinking about creating employment. Nobody's thinking about youth welfare. And people want to live. Now, the side they are using now is that they will burn their children here or there, send them there to study, and bring them back here to come and be either the chief medical director of hospital that is not functioning, so that their children will be looting money from there, or make them a board of director, or a judge, or a federal high court, or a magistrate court. That's what they will do. Then the masses are there on their own, looking for greener pasture outside. And now, Donald Trump is looking for a way to bring in policies, or bring in directives, looking for the law to deport these people back. When you deport them back, and what happened next? They will still look for a way to come back. That one is on that. Then on the issue of human rights, just like as I said earlier, America is a signatory to various international treaties, protocols, and conventions that has to do with human rights, which I have mentioned. So if you say that somebody is an illegal immigrant, you should treat that person as a human being, not as an animal. That one is one. Then you should follow the procedure, the processes of taking the person back to his country. Then if you have those who say that they are refugees, those who are in your country on asylum, you also look what the law said. You apply the law. Don't do as if you are a military dictator. So these are the issues that we are looking at. And we are also calling on those people, the victims. If you know that in the course of trying to deport you back, your right is being violated, and the Trump did not follow the due process. Thank God that they have a judiciary that is working. They are operating a society, the rule of law is working, where the judges will interpret the law, give the declaration, make order as it is, as the law provide, not before checking the position of the president. You file action against them. And I can tell you plethora of cases where the court there in America has ruled against the American president in all these policies in favor of the person whose right is being the victim of a human rights violation. So that one is on that. I still go back to what I'm saying. The root of all this is that we are having, in Africa here, we are having, okay, if you check, let me say senators. How many senators we have? Ask them, where are their children? That one is one. House of Rep member, how many are they? Where are their children? Permanent secretaries, ministers, where are their children? Their children is here in America. And they are here destroying all the democratic institution we have. Anything that will make the system to be functional, they will destroy it. Look at our electoral processes, where the people can exercise their destiny to elect good person. They have destroyed it. And the judiciary is not helping matters. So these are the issues. The world leaders like Trump, they should have a meeting. Just like as I said, if probably we are still going to have IBA conference in Toronto by November, I also will be there. I will still hammer on this issue. Because if we don't get it right from our leaders, stop them from going to any country apart from their own. Have you ever seen Trump coming to Kuba General Hospital for medication? But our own, any little thing, permanent secretaries, local government chairman, all of them, they will jet out. And they will also announce it, that our president is in France for medical checkup. Whereas we have national hospital. So these are the issues. Because I don't know. Most of the times, I think it was former EFCC chairman Farida Waziri was saying that our leaders need to undergo some psychiatric this before we elect them. Okay, because personally, as I am, I cannot travel to my village and I see my own house. I'm in Abuja. I was unable to come and put my house in order. As I travel, I will look for somebody, my mate, who also put their own house in order. I now carry my bag to go there and sleep.
Okay, thank
you. And I have siblings. Thank you. This is as stupid as that.
Thank you, Maxwell.
So we should also look inward and...
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So let me get to Idem. Now, can Nigeria walk through ECOWAS, the African Union, or the UN to demand fairer treatment for its citizens abroad?
My name is Efem, not Idem. First of all, I think there are some, some corrections I need to make here. We're speaking as if migration policies of nations are universal. There are migration policies, there are national policies on labor migrations. These are not universal. These are just states within states' limits. And so I think that is one thing we have to know. Because when you talk about migration, you're talking about laws, you're talking about regulations, you're talking about decisions or the government directions concerning migration or immigrants. And this is just domestic policies. And so I would like to say that, with regards to issues that have to do with migration, national migration policies or labor laws, I think there's some form of interstate negotiations, bilateral agreement, which where one of the speakers talked about it at the early hours of the program. I think that is what we have to look at. There should be negotiations. There should be some form of bilateral agreement reached between states parties, when it comes to issues of visa, issues of migration. Then the second point I want to also talk about is the fact that which also relates to the question you've just asked. Can Nigeria walk through a multilateral body to stem these challenges of migration? Yeah, I think Nigeria can do that. But first, I will advise or suggest that we have to start with the negotiations, bilateral negotiations. We have to start talking with the states, the United States and other countries, whether it's the Europeans like one of my colleagues in the studio talk about. I think we should begin from there. Then these other issues should be taken to ECOWAS and the African Union, the United Nations. Of course, there are human rights laws, there are migration and labor laws, which is embedded, and most of them are conventions and treaties which state parties have signed to. I think these are all areas that we can look at, to see how we could stem these challenges that is perturbing the international system. And also, one thing we should never forget, we have to consistently take into consideration that migration policies, migration law are ever evolving. So if you come to Nigeria, we have our own. Now, and aside that, there's so much uncertainty presently in the international system where, the surest way to go is through concerted effort, which is what we call, I call recently, we call it collectivization, where groupings of nations have to come together to look for solutions to global challenges, which migration is also part of, And migration too is just not the fact, it does not stem from bad governance, or like we have been, the discourse has totally portrayed. There are other issues like environmental degradation, climate change. And these are areas that the international bodies, as well as states, will have to take into consideration. Now, I will also say that there's what is called expedited removal now in the United States, which is a process where undocumented immigrants can be removed from the country without a full and formal court proceedings. These are their national laws and their national policies. But if you go further, this will expand the use of expedited removal, as it will now apply both to undocumented immigrants within the U.S. and those arriving at a U.S. border without authorization. So all these are, state policies. But you see, one thing that we have to go home with is the fact that there's what is called reciprocity. So if the United States has decided to give Nigerian citizens 3 months visa, a 3-month visa, maybe one entry, it is left for the Nigerian government to also reciprocate, which is normal. In international relations, there's nothing wrong with reciprocity, and there's nothing wrong with...
Might there not be a backlash for that?
When you say backlash,
between bilateral...
no, when you say backlash, sometimes you treat the developing world and the weak states as if they are, we're talking, we relate to the relationship between the weak and the superpowers. It's a relationship of subordinate and superordinate, which is not supposed to be. Every state is sovereign. Every state has territorial integrity, and there is equality of state in the international system. Nonetheless, I will conclude with the fact that, most of this problem we face is because, in international relations or in the global system, it is a rule of law for the weak and the rule of strong for the powerful. But if you are able to harness your comparative advantage, I think you might be able to stand up to most of the superpowers, in a whole lot of ways. And don't forget, you see, Nigeria is not just a country that you can toil away with, you can just throw away, It's a country that everybody will want to reckon with. And so I'm glad that the minister, our minister, foreign minister, last few weeks or so said that Nigeria is not a dumping ground, and that they should be treated with respect and integrity. And so this is what we should be talking about. Okay. Then finally, I would like to say, I think it is one thing that we look for solution than to criticize the government. When we keep talking and criticizing the government and looking at fault lines and all that, this administration, this administration, but what is our contribution as citizens? It should be what solution should we give the government to go along with, in terms of, it's a collective effort. As a citizen, you must contribute to your country. Thank you very much.
Now, Chude, let me ask you one question. Talking about solidarity and talking about strengthening our image and getting a stronger perception abroad and what have you, how can Nigerian media, especially, and also diaspora influencers, help reframe the global narrative from suspicion to strength?
Yes, I think it's a very, very good question, really, because the media has a critical role to play, obviously, absolutely. Why do you think that countries spend so much in propaganda? You have the BBC, that is set off for a particular purpose. You have the CNN, and then other international networks. You have RT, from Russia, and then you have, Turkey and all that. All of these people, all of these media organizations are set up for the propagation, for the projection of the image of these countries that are setting them up, and to also set an agenda that is based on the national strategic interests of the host countries of these media organizations. And so the media is a very powerful weapon, whether domestically or internationally, for instance. It's why politicians everywhere do not joke with the media. They want to, curry favor from the media. They want, a particular kind of relationship, because there is this belief that the media can make and don't make them. And of course, the media can set an agenda. Agenda, a lot of times, are not set by politicians. It is the media, through the people that set a particular agenda. I remember that lady that was killed, the musician, is it the gospel singer, I can't remember her name now, that was died as a result of a wife battering. You can see that it took the kind of reports and the kind of concentration on that particular issue by the media to get the National Assembly to do a special session and to talk about her as a person. She's just a musician, a gospel musician. That's the power of the media. So at the international, scene, it is also very important. And unfortunately, Africa we have not been able to harness the power of the media in the African continent. Perhaps if we cannot get a particular, media organization, maybe NTA, for instance, trying to project a different kind of narrative, positive kind of narrative for the African continent, or maybe South Africa, SABC, then we might need to have an African, Pan-African media network that will be able to have the kind of force and the weight that some of these other international media organizations have. I think that is one way to begin to change the narrative. Of course, we have seen how international media organizations that are hostile to African interests, or that are not very very well disposed to African interests, we have seen how they concentrate essentially on negative stories coming out of Africa. How many of them concentrate on the good? And so there's this bias, obviously, against Africa in the reportage. And the only way we can do it, Chinua Achebe said, look, if you don't like the story of the chase, how did he say? He said, write your own story. So we need to write our own story. We don't like their story. We don't like all the negativities that are coming out from there. But we also need to do our own part. And perhaps, again, we have started at an individual, on an individual basis. What you people are doing now, Arise is doing. Arise, where people are watching this program now in the United States, in the United Kingdom, and many parts of the world. That's one way to start. And then perhaps when other nations have that capacity also, that Arise has, for instance, and they're able to also do their own projection of the continent and of the continent and their countries, like this other global media organizations, then perhaps we'll begin to change the narrative of Africa. And you also remember that the visit to the White House, that the President Trump reportedly asked the Liberian president where he learned to speak English, that he speaks such good English, better than the English spoken by some people here at the White House and all that. It could be degrading, really, if you look at it from that perspective. But he probably doesn't know. After all, George Bush Jr., before he became president, didn't even know who were America's strategic, partners. Taiwan, Hong Kong, he didn't know anything about them. Because there's this thing about the average American, that the world begins and starts with America, but that is not the truth. But we need to let them know through what we do.
That actually reminds me of Donald Trump, that was asking the Liberian president how come he spoke English so beautifully. And his such forepower was almost laughable. But thank you so much, Maxwell Opara. Thank you so much, Acike, Chude, and thank you so much, Efem Ubi, for being with me this morning on Perspectives. Now, we want to talk about, we are heading for a short break. No, we're not heading for a short break, we're ending the show. Thank you so much for being with us on Perspectives. And at the end of the day, what we need to do is sell our brand. Today we have seen that immigration isn't just about law and dignity, and it doesn't begin at the border. If we want fairness abroad, we must first confront the inequalities we tolerate at home. We must protect our people, not just with passports, but with policy, presence, and purpose. Let the standards be equal globally, and let the dignity of every Nigerian traveler never again be up for negotiation. That's all we have time for today. You've been watching Perspectives here on Arise News with me, Ruth Osime. Remember, life is a learning curve. God willing, we shall be back here this time next week to do the same thing all over again. I need my cup of coffee. Until then, do have a blessed week. Goodbye.